Hello everybody and welcome to Mr. Stansfield's educational videos. Today I want to go over a couple of things. One would be plotting information points on an image to look at color balance and other information. We can get really specific with how an image looks through plotting these points, and also to look at how to do a color balance adjustment using a curves layer. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to grab the eyedropper tool right here. We're going to go ahead, in this case, we're going to select 3 or 5 by 5 up here. The default is point sample. We want to change that because the point sample isn't really going to give us the information that we want. In this case, I'm going to choose 5 by 5 with this image, but 3 by 3 is probably better for most applications. So here we have an image that somebody's taken, and this is playing around with the white balance settings, taking a picture of a picture. And the goal through the original project was to create a relatively neutral image here on the back of the screen and have everything else be color shifted. I think we did a pretty good job, but let's go ahead, after we've selected the eyedropper tool and the 5 by 5 average, I'm going to plot some points, and I'm going to do that by holding the shift key and clicking around some areas that I expect to be neutral. I expect to be gray. And if you look here, I've got a 1 and 2, and then if I go over here to this little information palette, I see the number 1 and the number 2, and there are 3 numbers here next to R, G, and B. So looking at these numbers, the red in the number 1 is 213, the green is 162, and the B is 201. Every color in Photoshop is made up of 3 colors, R, G, B, red, green, and blue, and every color is plotted between 0 and 255. So if these numbers were 255, 255, 255, that would be white, and if it was 0, 0, 0, that would be black. What this is telling us right here on this first plotted point is that the red at 213 is most prevalent, the blue is the next most prevalent at 201, and then the green is the lowest number here at 162. I'm going to show you in just a second how those numbers are going to help us to make this point neutral. And then you can see that too, it's pretty similar, 218, 175, 245, a little bit different. You can see that 245 though is pretty close to 255, which is the top end. That would be white or a full max value of the color. So the next thing in this process is to go down here and grab a new curves layer. You could do that a couple of different ways, but that's the way I'm going to do it. Grab the little half circle, and here's our new curves layer. Let's start by going to RGB. Actually, let's not do that. Let's go to red. And we're going to just look at this first number here. We're not going to worry about number 2. We're just going to look at the number 1 point, which is right here. So 1 says 213, 162, 201. And actually, we're going to start with the blue instead of the red channel. If we click up here, click on the blue channel, because that's the middle. I'm sorry, we're not going to start with the blue. We're going to start with the green. We're going to try to make everything the same number as the middle number. So I command click on the 1, and it plots this point right here on the curves. What I'm going to do is use the up arrow on the keyboard until it says 201. Right? If I can't get 201, I'm just going to choose the next closest number. In this case, I'm going to choose 200. And then I'm going to go to the red channel and do the same thing. So I'm going to command click on this point, and then I'm going to actually go down until it's at 201. Right? So you can see now it says 201, 200, 201 on this number 1 point. What that's telling us is that that is now neutral. That is a gray value. There's no color shift on that single point. However, if you look at the number 2 over here, you can see that it's 206, 210, 245. There's still a color shift over there. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and pick the middle number, which in this case is the green number, 210, and try to average it out. So I'm going to go to the red channel, command click on the 2, which is actually pretty close to this other point. So if I were to adjust it, it would actually cause some problems. But this blue is way off. So we're going to go to the blue, command click right there, and you can see it's actually pretty close to the edge. So I'm actually just going to slide it up to the edge and then drag that down to 210. Okay. Now there's a slight red shift. What it's saying is right here on this number 2, but I'm not too worried about that right now. I could drag this blue down so that's like a little bit more of an average. 206, 210, 208 would maybe be a little bit more accurate, but or less different. But you can see the difference between 210 and 208 is negligible. The other thing I could do is, oh, and look at this over here. So our number 1 changed. Now number 1, the blue is 173. So I'm going to command click there and bring that back up to 201. Okay, all right. And I can click the little eyeball for the before and after. It's hard to see this, but there's a little bit of a color shift on the screen. After I do my color balance, it looks pretty neutral. Now the rest of the colors change, and the luminosity changes, which means that the brightness changes. So if I go over here and change the blending mode to luminosity, it's just going to change the color. Oh, I'm sorry, just the color, not the luminosity. So if I just select color, it won't affect the luminosity, it just affects the color, and those numbers are where I want to be. You can see here it's a little bit blue. I could change that a little bit, but it's not that big of a deal. It's close enough. As long as I'm within 5 points, I'm where I want to be. Now, if I added a point, you can sort of see there's a little bit of a shift down here. If I shift click, added a third point, you could see, yeah, we could fine tune this even more. But I think that's pretty good. So that's how you can plot points to tell you what the colors are on any point in Photoshop. You can adjust those points using curves and individual color curves on this curves layer. You know, if we go back to the RGB, I haven't changed that RGB, but you can see the red, green, and blue channels on that curves adjustment have been adjusted, and each one's kind of different. A couple things to remember when you're doing this. One is to change the sample size before you start anything else. 2, to always do this in a layer. You never want to do this kind of color adjustment without doing a curves layer, and always save it as a Photoshop file whenever you're working on something like this, because you want to save that layer. In case it's not right, you can always throw it away and get rid of it if you're working and saving in layers.